All right, so today we're doing something a little different. We're not just going to learn about history, we're going to become detectives. Think of it like a cold case, but one that's thousands of years old. Our mission? To figure out how on earth we know what really happened way, way back in the past.
And our whole investigation kicks off with this one really brilliant question. I mean, think about it. How do we actually know what happened 100 years ago, let alone thousands? No one's around to tell us. That is the big mystery we're going to crack today. Okay, so first things first. Let's really frame this challenge. It's easy to remember what you did yesterday, right? But 100 years ago? 1,000? Now that's a whole different ballgame.
Yep, knowing about yesterday? No problem. You can check your phone, ask a friend. Last year? Still pretty doable. But 8,000 years ago? Wow. I mean, the people are gone, the languages might be totally lost, the entire landscape could be different. That is where the real detective work, the real investigation, has to kick in.
So you can't solve a mystery without investigators, right? And when it comes to the past, we've got two main types of detectives on the case. And they both have their own very special set of skills.
First up, you've got the historians. Think of them as the document experts. They're the ones digging through ancient writings, letters, records, all the stuff they call sources. And then you've got the archaeologists. These are the folks who literally get their hands dirty. They're out there studying the physical stuff people left behind. You know, buildings, tools, even bones. So one reads the stories, and the other, well, they dig them up.
And this really gets to the heart of it all. See, everything they find, whether it's a shard of pottery, an old coin, or a poem written on a piece of bark, it's not just some old thing. It's a clue. And just like a detective, they piece all these clues together to build a picture of what life was actually like back then.
Okay, so what do these ancient clues actually look like? Let's pop open the evidence locker, shall we? We're going to take a look at the main types of proof our historical detectives have to work with.
And right away, you see a huge difference in how things survive. You've got manuscripts, which were written by hand on stuff like palm leaves or bark, super fragile. A lot of them just got eaten by bugs or fell apart over time. But then you have inscriptions. These things were built to last. I'm talking carved into solid stone or metal, basically broadcasting a message that could survive for centuries.
But the manuscripts that did make it? Oh, they are an absolute treasure trove. They give us this incredibly rich, almost personal look into the ancient world. It wasn't just about big, famous battles. We're talking science, medicine, epic poems, plays, even the daily lives of kings. It's like finding a fragile, forgotten library from a lost world.
Inscriptions, on the other hand, were the complete opposite of intimate. These were public service announcements, ancient style. Kings would get their biggest victories or their newest laws carved right into stone for everybody to see. This was the official story, you know? The stuff meant to show off their power and make sure that nobody forgot them.
But here's a big question. What about all the people who couldn't write, or whose lives weren't important enough to be carved in stone? Well, that's where our archaeologists come in and totally shine. They find the ordinary stuff, the objects of everyday life. We're talking about the actual pot someone cooked dinner in 4,700 years ago, or the tools a farmer used, or even the bones of animals that tell us what people were eating. These little things, they tell the stories that were never, ever written down.
Now, any good detective will tell you this. Where you find the clue is just as important as what the clue is. And it's the same for history. The location of all these artifacts helps us literally create a map of the past, both in terms of geography and time.
So, by figuring out how old these artifacts are and noting where they were found, we can start to build a timeline. For instance, we now know that some of the very first farming communities popped up about 8,000 years ago in the Silliman and Kurthar Hills. Fast forward a few thousand years, and you see the first big cities emerging along the Indus River. And then even later, powerful kingdoms start rising in the Ganga Valley. Every single discovery helps fill in another piece of this giant historical puzzle.
So you see, the geography itself tells a story. It makes sense, right? People settled where they could find water and grow food. Big cities grew along major rivers because they were basically ancient highways for trade. So this map of archaeological sites, it's really a map of how civilization spread and grew.
Okay, so we've got our written clues and we've got our physical clues. But there's one last massive hurdle. What do you do when your best piece of written evidence is in a language that nobody has spoken for thousands of years? Well, you've got to crack the code. And this amazing process actually has a name.
It's called decipherment, and honestly, it's one of the coolest parts of historical detective work. It's pure code breaking. You're taking what looks like a bunch of meaningless scribbles and turning them back into words, ideas, and incredible stories.
The most famous example of this has to be the Rosetta Stone, and the way they cracked it is just genius. So here's how it went down. They find this stone slab with the same text written in 3 different scripts. Now, lucky for them, one of them was ancient Greek, which scholars could already read. Then they noticed the pattern. In the Egyptian script, certain names, royal names, were always circled in an oval frame called a cartouche. So they took the known Greek names, like Ptolemy and Cleopatra, and matched them to the symbols inside those circles. This let them figure out the sounds each symbol made, like, hey, this lion symbol must be the sound for L. And step by step, letter by letter, they cracked the entire code and brought a lost language back to life. Just incredible.
So it really feels like we've got all the tools we need, doesn't it? We've got our detectives, we've got the clues, we've even got the code breakers. So the big question is, after all that work, do we get one single, simple story of the past?
And here's where our detective story takes a final fascinating twist. The answer is not really. You know, the book this whole explainer is based on is called Our Pasts, with an S at the end, and that's on purpose, because the big takeaway is that there isn't just one single past. There are many.
Just think about it for a second. The life of a powerful king, the guy who's commissioning giant stone inscriptions of his victories, that's going to be a very different life from a farmer in some tiny village, right? And here's the catch. Since it was the rulers who made most of the written records, our clues are a bit biased. We know a ton about their battles and their accomplishments, but the everyday lives of ordinary people, the hunters, the farmers, the artisans, that's way harder to piece together. Their stories aren't told in giant monuments, but in the little things they left behind, like broken pots and worn-out tools.
And that kind of brings us full circle, right back to us, today. We've seen how these detectives of the past can build entire worlds from the faintest of clues. Which leaves us with one last really big question to think about. What clues are we leaving behind for the future? 1,000 years from now, when the detectives of the future are digging around, what kind of story are our clues going to tell about us?